If you're doing music in a professional or even just enthusiast mode where you want high quality reference playback, there's a great way that just came into my world a week ago through the recommendation of a good friend and fellow recording engineer, producer, musician, John Sete. He gave me an incredible idea when I ran into difficulties shortly after I acquired these in-ear monitors that he suggested. They're from China. They're called Chu, and in this case it's Chu 1, which is actually important to keep track of. The Chu 2s are supposedly better, but maybe not, depending on what you're looking for in a monitor. At any rate, I wanted to talk to you not just about these particular ones, which I happen to think are very much worth your time exploring, especially because they are so incredibly cheap. I got these delivered from China for $16 Canadian, all in, through AliExpress. And it only took a week to get here. So pretty amazing. They came in really handy for me because as a matter of fact, right now I'm taking a break, a day off, because last night I finished mixing the new Zulu Matrix record, new redux of the 30-year-old Hyperspace for all you collectors out there. So I've got great news. The mix is done. I haven't yet listened back to it, so this is just the first pass. But I'm taking a break and I thought I'd make a video about these in-ear monitors. And not just about these, because they are great, but only after I did the modification that John came up with. Because when they arrived, they came with 3 different sizes of these ear tips. Silicone, small, medium, and large. And the small and the medium were far too small and the large was too big. Perfect. Obviously, everyone's ears are a different shape and size, but there's a couple things I want to share with you. So John came up with this idea and it saved me in terms of being able to use these. And I actually used these as critical listening tools for my mix on Hyperspace. And I'm going to get into some details about that later in the video, about making sure that you have them set up properly, some different ideas to get real reference quality. But first I want to tell you about his idea. Because I had that difficulty with those ear tips, I could not use them at all. In fact, I was going to throw them in the garbage. But he came up with this great idea, and that is to use these disposable earplugs to make new ear tips. And so that's what you can see here with the bright orange coloring. That's because these are using my ready-made ones using these, and I'm going to make another one right here for you to see exactly how it's done, but it's super easy. So I found out from experience now from doing this that the best way to do it is counterintuitive. One might think that you would want to use, because we're going to cut them in half, and one might think that the best thing to do would be to use the end that is intended to go into your ear, the tapered end. No. That will work, but it won't last, because the actual shaft on these, let's just call them buds, because that's what they are. In-ear monitor is just a fancy name for buds. So the actual shaft that it goes onto on the bud is a lot more substantial than what you would have on a typical set of disposable buds like you would get with a cell phone or an MP3 player or whatever. And so even though it can work with the tapered end, the strain is just too much because of the diameter of that shaft. And so it just rips. After only a few hours of use, it ripped. And so I used the thicker end of the earplug, and that lasts, and it works great. Now, you may not have to do this if your ears just happen to be the ear canal, the opening into your ear, if it just happens to be the perfect diameter so that one of the ones that they come with will fit, because these silicone tips are actually a good idea. And again, John had this other suggestion. I have no experience with these so-called in-ear monitors, so I counted on his guidance. And his tip was to moisten the silicone so that it actually helps it to make a seal, because this is the important thing. There are two things that are essential with these. And one is that you have to have as close to an airtight seal as possible. And the other is that the position must be, well, three things. The two others are about the position. It has to be the correct position in terms of how far the bud is into your ear, and also that it doesn't move around, because the proximity effect is staggering. And you won't be able to do anything at all if the thing's moving around, because it changes the sound so dramatically, especially the extremes. Both the bass and the treble are going to be extremely altered by just the tiniest change in position. And so unless these silicone ones happen to be exactly right for your ear to get a perfect snug fit that doesn't move around, well, then you should try this. Because with this, not only do you get a great seal, but it works in and does not move. And so once you've got that position just right, and we're going to get into a little bit about that later, about the importance of that and how you should be, let's say, calibrating. Not just the EQ curve for this, but calibrating in terms of the physical positioning and calibrating yourself in that regard. But we'll get into that. So first I will remove the one that we will be replacing. So as you can see, it made quite a large opening. And there is how it's shaped without the tip. So it's quite simple what we're going to do, and we don't need a lot of tools. All we need is, first of all, a pair of scissors. So I'm just going to cut it right down the middle like this. And there we have it. And now I've just got two screwdrivers, a very small jeweler's screwdriver and a typical sized one. And they're both the same tip, Phillips, what some people refer to as the star. So we will begin with the smaller one. As you can see, the foam is taking a moment to recover from being pinched, but that's okay because we just need the center, and the center is easy to determine even when it's in this rather deformed state. And so we will just simply stick the screwdriver in the middle and then twist it, spin it while pushing down until you get to the very bottom. And then pick it up and just keep spinning it and push it right through. And hopefully get it through the center. So we're down through the center all the way through. And so now that we've done that first tiny one just to get our pilot hole, we can take the larger Phillips screwdriver and do the very same thing. Except now what I'm going to do is just go a little bit of the way in, and as you can see, spinning it is important to act like a drill, but I'm not going all the way in, I'm just going maybe halfway, and then we can see there's the existing hole, and we're doing it again from the other side. Oops, my fingers are in the way. And now I'll just finish it, get it through. You know, it's a lot harder to do this for the camera than in real life, so to speak. This is much more difficult for the camera. But unfortunately, the camera is in a strange position, and I'm making a mess out of this. But that's okay. I'm sure you get the idea. I'm going to have to... You know what? I think I'm going to go through it again with this. Just to help get it done. I'm making it look a lot harder than it really is. There we go. And so once you get through, it's made a bit of a mess, but that's okay. So now I'm going through it again from the other side. As you can see, it goes easier now that the hole's been made larger. And now it's ready to just get pushed on to the bud. But you have to do it quickly because see how that hole has already closed up again. So let's just put this through again. This is just because it's freshly made. As you can see, the one that I removed is still okay. So it's just that this is freshly made and it doesn't want to stay open yet. But it should go on now. Everything is going bad for this video. There we go, it's on. So right now, because it's been squished by me, it doesn't have a very symmetrical shape to it, but as the foam of the earplug recovers, it will eventually look normal, as you can see from this other one and the one again that I removed that I made prior. And you've still got the other half of the earplug to use as an earplug, I suppose. So two things about calibration. One is that you're going to want to use EQ curves for these to be able to get a perfect flat in today's terminology. Not actually flat, but psychoacoustically, if you want to call it that, flat. You can get these online from various sources. Just do a quick search and you'll have no problem finding them. Critical is a good source. And then you'll apply that curve. And there are a couple of different curves that you can get. And I found that for my own use, I had to customize the curve because here's the problem. As I have said now more than once, the position of this in your ear is a critical component of the sound. And the shape of your ear canal is going to affect that as well. And there's no way that that can be predetermined, at least not yet, unless you happen to have an ear specialist who can do all of that for you, but then you're not going to be using $16 buds, are you? At any rate, the point is you're going to have to trust your own ears. And if you are trying to engineer your own music, I certainly hope that you can trust your ears and that you have some training. So, start with those curves and then customize them by using a trusted sound source. And it's a good idea to begin with something such as, well, first of all, you're going to need resource material that you know the sound of. For me, it's easy because I've been making music for a living since the early 1980s. I've got no shortage of reference material that I really know because I mixed it, I made it. In fact, there's one right up there on the shelf that I actually use. And so you're going to want to be able to play that on a source that you know. For example, a good set of trusted headphones, over the ear ones that are also calibrated and that you know, and you know the material through them, so that you can do A/B comparisons. Or if you have a really good studio that's well tuned and your bins are tuned and the room is tuned, then you can do the same thing. But it would be a lot easier and wiser to do it with a pair of over-the-ear cans, because then you're not going to have the difference of a pair of bins and you're hearing them in the room versus cans over your ears and then your in-ear monitors. Now, so that's the first thing. The other is that when you are using these, get them into a position, you want it to be the optimal position where it's as deep into the ear canal as possible. Oh, and that reminds me, I wanted to mention one other thing. They have these silly ear clips, these things that you're supposed to fish the wire through that holds it in position. Don't use these, because all these do is guarantee that it's not going to stay in position for a couple of reasons. First of all is the fact that it keeps the wire, it is going to use the wire to pull the ear plug out. And that's not what you want. You're in the studio, you're not running a marathon with these things on. These are fine if you're running around or something like that. But if you're sitting at your mixing desk or at a mouse and screen, then you're not going to be moving all around. So you can just put these on and wear them and just have the wire dangling. And that way they'll stay in. You don't have this fishing the wire out of your ear and changing their position. I learned that the hard way because I just assumed that I needed to use these because again, I had never used these before last week. And so avoid that. Get that position as close to perfect as you can get, knowing that it's going to stay. There's no point in getting them jammed right in if they're going to be working their way out because of the shape of your ear or something like that. So get them into a position where it's as close to optimal as possible, but it's going to stay. And then you know that that's the position that you're working from. And then get used to how they sound in that position. And then calibrate them accordingly, knowing. And here's the thing, you have to know your ears. You have to have good ears and you have to know them. To know what has changed from the actual optimal jammed right in position versus where they are naturally. And you're going to have to take that into account when you are calibrating, when you're making your own EQ curve. Does that make sense? And so once you've done that, then again, do your A/B tests and all the rest of that, and then mix something using them. For me, it's handy because I got these while I was setting up for my mix on Hyperspace. And so I did that while I was doing that. I was doing both at the same time. Doing test bits. Here's how the kick sounds. How does it sound in the room? How does it sound on my cans? How does it sound on these? And that's what you're going to need to do to be able to get that curve just right. So I think that pretty much covers it. The amazing takeaway from this is that for $16 and the cost of a bunch of these stupid disposable earplugs, basically nothing, you're laughing. You've got really serious, ready to mix, to do serious work.